You ever catch yourself making a snap judgment, maybe about, I don't know, a new phone based on the ad or just meeting someone new,
Oh, absolutely.
and then later you kind of realize, huh, maybe I was way off.
Exactly. It happens all the time. Our minds work in these, well, surprising ways, especially when we're judging things.
Yeah, it's kind of humbling.
It is. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, those hidden processes behind how we think and judge, based on listener curiosity, actually.
Right, and we've pulled insights, especially from Daniel Kahneman's work, to explore this.
Yeah, some really fascinating stuff.
And just to be clear, this isn't going to be like a heavy academic lecture, right?
No, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Think of it as us doing the legwork, digging through the research.
Finding the key takeaways.
Exactly. Highlighting those patterns in our thinking we often miss, giving you, the listener, a shortcut to grasp these big ideas without getting, totally bogged down.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So where do we start getting a handle on this?
Well, a really crucial first step is just having the right words. Like, imagine trying to talk about astronomy without words like planet or star.
Right, you need the vocabulary.
Precisely. So for judgments, we need terms too. And a big one is biases.
Okay, biases.
Yep.
But we're not just talking about opinions here, are we? Like preferring one thing over another.
Good question. No, not exactly. These cognitive biases aren't just random errors. They're systematic, predictable.
Predictable errors. How so?
They pop up again and again in certain situations. Having a name for them helps us spot them. Take the halo effect.
The halo effect, what's that?
You see it everywhere. If someone seems really confident, right? Charismatic speaker.
Yeah.
We tend to just automatically think everything about them is better, even their ideas, maybe more than they deserve.
Okay. Like that really smooth presenter who might not actually have the best data, but we believe them more.
Exactly that. So knowing the term halo effect, just having that label.
Lets you pause and think, wait, am I being swayed by the presentation here?
Precisely. It helps you anticipate it, recognize it, and maybe evaluate the actual substance a bit more carefully.
Okay, so we're building this mental toolkit of labels. Halo effect. What's another big one?
Another really common one is the availability heuristic.
Availability heuristic.
Sounds technical. It just means we judge how frequent or likely something is based on how easily examples spring to mind.
Okay, that makes sense. Like if I can easily think of examples of something.
You assume it happens a lot, but the catch is what comes to mind easily isn't always what's most common statistically.
Gotcha. Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about this. Are there more English words that start with the letter K, or more words that have K as the third letter?
Starting with K? Kite? King?
No.
Yeah, lots come to mind fast. Third letter K. That's harder. I'd guess starting with K.
Most people do. It's easier to search your memory for words starting with a letter.
Right.
But statistically, there are actually more words with K as the third letter. Ask, bake, like.
Wow, okay. So my brain took the easy retrieval route.
Exactly. The availability of those starting with K words skewed your judgment.
That's a neat example. You know, it reminds me, I used to think adultery was, like, way more common among politicians than, say, doctors or lawyers.
Interesting. Why did you think that?
Well, because when a politician has an affair, it's huge news, right? Scandals, headlines everywhere.
Ah, the media coverage.
Yeah, it's so available in my mind because of the intense coverage. So I probably overestimated how common it actually was compared to other groups where it might happen just as often but doesn't make headlines.
That's a perfect illustration of the availability heuristic in action. The vividness and media frequency made it seem more prevalent.
Okay, so availability. Got it. Now, what about an intuition? That gut feeling seems almost magical sometimes.
It can feel that way, yeah. Like the detective's hunch or the doctor who just knows what's wrong.
Is it magic?
Not quite.
Yeah.
Psychology suggests it's more about recognition. Herbert Simon, who studied chess masters, put it brilliantly. Intuition is nothing more and nothing less than recognition.
Recognition. So just remembering stuff.
In a highly refined way, yes. Experts, through tons of practice, chess, medicine, whatever, they build up this huge mental library of situations and patterns.
Okay.
So when they see a new situation, even subtle cues trigger access to that stored knowledge almost instantly. It feels like a flash of insight, but it's really fast pattern matching based on deep experience.
So that experienced firefighter who instantly knows how a fire might behave isn't psychic. They're just recognizing patterns learned over years.
Precisely. Their brain has stored countless fire scenarios. It's recognition honed by experience. Not magic, but still pretty amazing.
Definitely. Okay, so we have these automatic processes like availability and intuition. How does the brain manage all this? I've heard about like two systems.
That's a really useful way to think about it, yeah. Like two different modes of thinking. First, there's let's call it the automatic system.
The autopilot?
Kind of. It's
Yeah.
fast, effortless, runs in the background mostly. Recognizing faces, understanding simple sentences, dodging something thrown at you, that's the automatic system. Intuitive, associative.
Okay. And the other one?
That's the effortful system. Slow, deliberate, needs concentration. It's what you use for complex math, or following complicated instructions, or focusing on a specific task.
Like trying to remember all the capital cities starting with N.
Exactly. Or, the example Kahneman uses about reminding yourself to look right then left when stepping off the curb when you're visiting a country that drives on the opposite side. You have to consciously override your usual habit. That takes effort.
Right. The effortful system needs attention, and attention feels limited. I remember reading something wild about our pupils.
Oh yeah, the pupil dilation studies. Really fascinating. Researchers tracked pupil size while people did mentally demanding tasks, like remembering strings of digits.
What happened?
Their pupils literally got bigger, sometimes up to 50% larger, along with an increased heart rate during the most intense cognitive load.
Wow. So our eyes physically show how hard our brain is working.
It seems so. It's like a visible meter of mental effort. And interestingly, if the task got too hard and they kind of gave up, the pupils would shrink back down.
Incredible. A window into the mind, almost literally. And this links to that idea that when we're really concentrating hard, we can miss things right in front of us.
Yes. The invisible gorilla kind of thing. Or the study where people were counting basketball passes and missed someone in a gorilla suit walking through.
Yeah.
Or even simpler, the digit recall task you mentioned.
Yeah.
While people were straining to remember the numbers, a letter K was flashed briefly on the screen. Many participants completely failed to see it, even though they were looking right at it.
Effectively blind to it because their attention was maxed out.
Exactly. It shows that attention is a finite resource. When the effortful system is running at full capacity, we might not register other things.
That really drives home the limited budget idea for attention. So what specific things can this effortful system do that the automatic one just can't?
Well, the effortful system is key for following rules precisely, comparing things across multiple features, making deliberate choices between options. The automatic system is great at simple connections. This reminds me of that, and integrating info about one thing. But it struggles when you need to juggle multiple distinct topics or deal with purely statistical stuff.
Could you give an example of that difference?
Sure. Remember the availability heuristic. Let's say someone is described as meek and tidy, maybe wears glasses, likes quiet activities.
Okay. Sounds a bit like a stereotypical librarian.
Right. Your automatic system jumps on that resemblance immediately. Librarian. But the effortful system is needed to step back and ask, okay, but how many librarians are there compared to, say, farmers or salespeople? You need that deliberate thought to combine the stereotype resemblance with the actual base rate probability. The automatic system just sees the likeness.
Ah, I see. Automatic is resemblance, effortful is analysis plus statistics. That makes sense. What about task sets and executive control? Heard those terms too.
Yeah, task sets are basically the effortful system's ability to program your memory to follow specific, perhaps unnatural instructions, like if I asked you to read this page but count every instance of the letter F.
Oof. Yeah, that's not how I normally read. I'd have to consciously focus just on that.
Exactly. You're setting up a temporary task set to override your normal reading habits. That takes effortful control.
And executive control is the manager of all that.
Pretty much. It's the broader term for the functions that manage these tasks. Planning, switching attention, inhibiting impulses, monitoring progress. It heavily involves the prefrontal cortex, kind of the brain's CEO.
The CEO, I like that.
Yeah.
Now, it definitely feels like using this effortful system is, well, effortful. Do we naturally avoid it?
We absolutely do. There's something called the law of least effort. Our brains tend to default to the easier automatic route whenever possible. We conserve mental energy.
Makes sense. Why work hard if you don't have to?
Right. We break down big tasks. And you even see it physically. Try having a complex thought process while walking really fast.
Oh, yeah. I can't do that. I had to slow down or stop walking to really think.
Because both draw on that same limited pool of effortful resources. And that urge you get when facing a tough mental task to suddenly check your email or go get a snack.
Guilty. all the time.
That's often your brain trying to escape the cognitive strain. It takes self-control to stay on task.
Which sounds like it connects to ego depletion. That idea really struck me.
Yeah, Roy Baumeister's work. The core idea is that various types of voluntary effort, cognitive, emotional control, resisting temptation, they all seem to draw from a shared pool of mental energy.
Shared. So using willpower on one thing affects another unrelated thing.
That's what the research suggests. For example, people who had to stifle their emotional reactions while watching an upsetting movie,
Okay.
they tended to give up sooner on a subsequent difficult puzzle compared to people who didn't have to exert that initial emotional control.
Wow. So controlling emotions drained their puzzle-solving energy.
It seemed to deplete that common resource pool. Same thing with resisting tempting food. People who resisted fresh cookies gave up earlier on a later cognitive task than those who got to eat radishes instead. Resisting the cookies used up some willpower.
That explains so much. Like why, after a really demanding day at work, my ability to resist junk food just plummets.
Exactly. Your self-control muscle is tired.
Okay. So this effortful system is powerful, but depletable, and also kind of lazy. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, lazy in the sense that we often don't engage it unless we really have to. We tend to go with the first plausible answer that pops into our heads from the automatic system without double-checking. The cognitive reflection test demonstrates this well.
Remind me what that test does.
It gives you questions where there's an obvious intuitive answer that's actually wrong, like a bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost?
10 cents. No, wait. If the ball is 10 cents, the bat is $1. Total $1.20. Okay, got to think. 5 cents. Ball 5C, bat $1.05. Total $1.10.
Exactly. The intuitive answer is 10 cents, but the correct one requires overriding that intuition and engaging the effortful system.
And people who score low on that test.
They tend to be more impulsive, less willing to invest that mental effort to check their gut feelings. They accept the easy, intuitive answer. Those who score higher are generally more engaged thinkers, more alert, analytical, skeptical.
Less likely to be satisfied with the surface answer.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. How do ideas actually connect in our minds? Associative activation.
Yes. This is fundamental to the automatic system. It's how one idea automatically triggers a whole network of related ideas, memories, feelings, completely effortlessly.
Like a ripple effect.
Exactly. Think of the word beach. What comes to mind?
Sun, sand, water, vacation, maybe relaxing.
See, instantly a whole cascade of related concepts gets activated. Sand triggers water, sun triggers warmth, vacation triggers relaxation. It happens incredibly fast and mostly unconsciously. Our brain creates coherence.
Make sense of the world by linking things. Right. And a lot of this happens outside our awareness. We know less about why we think things than we think we do.
Which leads to priming, right? Influencing those associations.
Precisely. Priming is when exposure to one thing, a word, an image, an idea, makes related concepts more accessible in your mind for a short time. Like if I say the word eat tea,
I might think of SEOP or food more easily afterward.
Exactly. Eat primes concepts related to food. It's often very subtle, but it can influence subsequent thoughts and even actions.
Like that example of people primed with words about old age walking slower.
That's a classic one. The concept of slow was activated unconsciously.
Okay, so all this processing, automatic and effortful, gives us a feeling of ease or difficulty.
Yes. Think of it like a mental gauge. Cognitive ease versus cognitive strain.
Ease is good, strain is bad.
Sort of. Ease feels fluent, familiar, effortless, often linked to a good mood. It signals things are okay, trust your intuition. Strain feels difficult, unfamiliar, effortful. It signals a potential problem, maybe time to slow down and engage the effortful system, be more vigilant.
And this feeling can be influenced by weird things, like how easy something is to read.
Absolutely. Things presented clearly in bold font or even things that rhyme tend to generate more cognitive ease. And because ease feels good and familiar, we might subconsciously judge those things as more true or trustworthy.
Wow. So presentation matters, cognitively. How does this relate to memory illusions?
Well, memory isn't a perfect recording, it's reconstructive. And cognitive ease played a role in its illusions. For instance, the illusion of remembering.
How does that work?
Imagine you see a list of made-up names. Later, you see another list with some famous names, and one of those made-up names from the first list, say, Sebastian Kruger.
Okay.
That name, Sebastian Kruger, might feel vaguely familiar. You don't know why, you don't remember seeing it on the first list, but there's a flicker of recognition.
It's just a feeling.
Yeah, and that feeling of familiarity, that cognitive ease, can be misinterpreted. You might think, Sebastian Kruger. Sounds famous. Maybe he's an actor. Even though the familiarity just came from seeing it briefly before.
So familiarity gets mistaken for fame or importance.
It can. And this is why repetition is so powerful, even for false information.
Just hearing something over and over.
Makes it feel more familiar. That familiarity creates cognitive ease, and that ease can make the statement feel true, even if it's not. You don't even need to repeat the whole lie. Repeating parts of it can boost its perceived truthfulness.
That's slightly disturbing.
Yeah.
How easily repetition can sway us. Now, you said ease is linked to good mood. How does mood affect thinking?
Generally, a good mood seems to loosen the reins of the effortful system. We become more intuitive, more creative,
Sounds good.
but also less vigilant, more prone to logical errors, more reliant on that automatic system.
Why would that be?
Biologically, maybe a good mood signals safety. Things are good, no threats, so you can relax your mental guard, rely on shortcuts. A bad mood, conversely, might signal danger, prompting more careful, analytical, effortful thinking.
Interesting trade-off. Okay, thinking about how we perceive things. Norm theory. What's that about?
Norm theory is about how we decide if something is normal or abnormal. It suggests our judgment is heavily shaped by what just happened, or what alternative we can easily imagine.
How so?
Imagine you're in a fancy restaurant, and the person at the next table suddenly starts shouting at the waiter about their soup. Seems pretty abnormal, right?
Definitely.
But what if, just before that, you'd seen another diner complaining loudly about their steak, and the table next to them sending back their wine? Suddenly, the soup incident might feel a little less shocking, more part of a pattern for this specific and maybe terrible restaurant tonight.
The immediate context shifts my baseline of what seems normal.
Exactly. Recent events or easily imagined possibilities shape our perception of normality.
And related to perceiving events, our minds just automatically look for causes, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. We're cause-seeking machines. That hider and simile animation is the classic example.
The one with the shapes, the triangles and the circle.
Yeah. Just simple shapes moving around, but people invariably describe them using intention and emotion. The big triangle was angry, the little circle was scared, they were chasing each other.
Even though it's just geometry in motion.
Our automatic system is just wired to impose narratives, attribute agency, find causality. It helps us make sense of the world, even when we're applying it to abstract shapes.
We're natural storytellers.
Right.
And does this relate to how we first process information? I think we tend to just believe things initially.
That's Daniel Gilbert's research, yeah. It suggests that understanding a statement first involves implicitly accepting it as true.
Believing comes first.
The initial processing step seems to be belief. Unbelieving or doubting is a secondary operation. It requires effort. It's work for the deliberate, effortful system.
So if that system is busy or tired or just lazy,
we're more likely to just stick with that initial belief. We become more gullible, more likely to accept persuasive messages, especially empty ones, when we're mentally depleted.
Explains why late-night infomercials might seem more convincing. Okay, this leads nicely into jumping to conclusions. That acronym, WYSIAT.
WYSIAT stands for What You See Is All There Is.
Catchy. What does it mean for our thinking?
It's a core feature of the automatic system. It builds the best possible story based only on the information currently active and easily available. It doesn't stop to think about what information might be missing.
So it works with incomplete data.
All the time. If I tell you Alan is intelligent and strong, your automatic system quickly forms a positive impression.
Yeah, sounds like a good guy.
It doesn't automatically ask, but is he also cruel or dishonest? It just works with the intelligent and strong part. What it sees is all there is for building that initial impression. The coherence of the story matters more than the completeness of the data.
It jumps to conclusions based on limited evidence, okay? How does this relate to the anchoring effect you mentioned earlier?
Anchoring is a prime example of WYSIAT and suggestion. Remember, it's when an initial number, even an arbitrary one, influences your later estimates.
Right, like the Gandhi age question. If you first ask, was he older or younger than 140 versus older or younger than 35, people give very different final age estimates.
Exactly. Or the Wheel of Fortune study. People spun a wheel that landed on either 10 or 65. Then they were asked the percentage of African nations in the UN.
And the number they spun influenced their answer, even though it was totally random.
Significantly, those who landed on 10 guessed a much lower percentage than those who landed on 65. The random number served as an anchor.
How does the suggestion part work?
The anchor acts like a prime. Your associative machinery, your automatic system, starts looking for ways the anchor could be true. It selectively brings compatible evidence to mind. If the anchor is high, you start thinking of reasons the number might be high.
So my brain tries to make the anchor make sense, pulling my final answer closer to it.
That's the idea. It's a powerful, often unconscious bias.
Okay. Now, another bias mentioned was the belief in the law of small numbers. Sounds odd.
It refers to our mistaken intuition that small samples must be representative of the larger population they come from. We expect patterns we see in large numbers to show up even in very small sets of data.
So if a hospital reports that boys made up 60% of births last week, we might think something unusual is going on.
We might be tempted to, even though in a small sample like a week's worth of births, random fluctuations are perfectly normal and expected. We overinterpret randomness in small samples, looking for causes where there might be none. We expect small samples to mirror the population average too closely.
Which links to regression to the mean, right? That one felt tricky.
It can be counterintuitive. Regression to the mean is just the statistical fact that extreme results are likely to be followed by results closer to the average.
Like the really tall father, probably having a son who's tall but maybe not quite as tall.
That's one example.
Right.
Or think about performance. A golfer who shoots an incredibly low score in one round
Is probably going to shoot closer to their usual average in the next round.
Right. Not necessarily because they got worse, but because the first extreme score likely involves some element of luck or unusually perfect conditions that aren't likely to repeat exactly. Extreme performances tend to regress toward the average.
But we often attribute it to something else, like the flight instructor example.
Ah, yes. The instructor noticed that when he praised pilots for exceptionally smooth landings, they often performed worse the next time. And when he yelled at them for bad landings, they often did better.
So he concluded punishment works better than praise.
Right. But he was likely just observing regression to the mean. The extremely good landing was likely followed by a more average one, and the extremely bad one was also likely followed by a more average, better one, regardless of his feedback. The praise and punishment might have had little real effect.
Our intuition misses the statistical tendency.
Exactly. Intuitive predictions often fail to account for regression. We expect future performance to match the initial extreme observation.
Like with Julie, the early reader example. We predict high college GPA based on early reading.
Yes, we match intensities. She was an exceptional reader for her age, so we intuitively predict an equally exceptional GPA for a college student. But we often fail to consider how much regression will occur, how much less predictive early reading skill actually is for college success. We should regress our prediction towards the average GPA.
So corrected predictions are less extreme, closer to the average.
And generally more accurate, or at least less biased.
This sounds like it fuels overconfidence. The illusion of validity.
It certainly contributes. The illusion of validity is that feeling of confidence we get when the story fits together well, when the available information seems highly coherent with the prediction we're making.
Even if the evidence isn't actually that predictive, like the hiring example, Kim and Jane.
Right. If you interview a candidate, Kim, and she gives really impressive, consistent answers that fit your ideal profile, you feel confident predicting she'll succeed. The story feels right.
Even if interviews, historically, aren't great predictors of actual job performance.
Exactly. The internal coherence of the story creates confidence, the illusion of validity, overriding knowledge about the actual low predictability of the situation. You see this a lot with stock pickers, for instance. High confidence, despite poor average track records compared to simple index
The
funds.
story feels good, so we trust it.
Yeah.
Okay, now looking backward instead of forward. Hindsight bias. The I knew it all along thing.
Classic bias. Once an outcome is known, we tend to overestimate how predictable it was beforehand. Our memory reconstructs the past to fit the present.
Like after a surprise event, people say, oh, I saw that coming.
Yeah, or the study about Nixon's visit to China. Before the visit, people were asked to assign probabilities to various outcomes.
Oh.
After the visit, another group was asked what probabilities they would have assigned beforehand. People consistently recalled having assigned higher probabilities to the things that actually happened than the original group actually did. Knowing the outcome warped their memory of their prior uncertainty.
And that has bad consequences for judging decisions, right?
Definitely. We end up evaluating past decisions based on whether the outcome was good or bad, rather than whether the decision was sound based on the information available at the time. It punishes good decisions that had bad luck and rewards bad decisions that got lucky.
Makes learning from mistakes harder, too.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting back to the future. The planning fallacy.
Ah, yes. Our systematic tendency to be overly optimistic when planning. We underestimate the time, costs, and risks, and overestimate the benefits.
I think you mentioned my home renovation projects earlier.
Yeah.
Guilty as charged.
It's incredibly common. We focus on our specific plan, imagine everything going smoothly. That's the inside view.
My ideal scenario.
Right. We fail to take the outside view, looking at the statistics for similar projects. How long do kitchen renovations actually take on average? What are the common delays and cost overruns?
So asking what happened when others tried this, instead of just focusing on my own rosy plan.
Exactly. Taking that outside view, looking at base rates, is a powerful way to counteract the planning fallacy.
Good tip. Now, how about framing? How the question is asked.
Framing effects show that the way information is presented, the frame, can drastically change our choices, even if the underlying facts are identical.
The classic example being the surgery outcome.
Perfect example. Telling patients the 1-month survival rate is 90% sounds much better and leads to more people choosing the surgery than framing the exact same outcome as there is a 10% mortality rate in the first month.
Even though it's the same statistic.
But the frame survival versus mortality triggers different emotional responses and leads to different preferences. We tend to just accept the frame we're given.
Our choices are frame-bound, not necessarily reality-bound.
Okay.
And what about remembering experiences? Experienced utility versus remembered utility.
This is fascinating. Experienced utility is how you actually feel moment to moment during an experience.
Like, how painful is this dentist visit right now?
Exactly. Remembered utility is how you evaluate the experience later when you look back on it, and they aren't the same.
How do they differ?
Our memory of an experience seems heavily weighted by two things: the most intense point, the peak, and how it ended. Van, this is the peak end rule.
Peak and end. What about how long it lasted?
That's the other surprising part. Duration neglect. The overall length of the experience seems to have very little impact on our remembered evaluation.
So a shorter, intensely painful experience might be remembered as worse than a longer, moderately painful one, if the longer one ended slightly better.
Precisely. Like the cold hand experiments, people often preferred repeating a trial where their hand was in ice water for 60 seconds plus another 30 seconds, where the water was slightly less cold compared to just the initial 60 seconds.
Even though the total time in cold water was longer in the preferred option.
Yes. Because the second option ended on a slightly less painful note, the remembered utility was better, even though the experienced utility, total pain, was worse.
Wow. Our remembering self makes choices our experiencing self might not like.
It has huge implications for how we make decisions based on memory.
Okay, last one as we wrap up. The focusing illusion.
Right. This is our tendency that whatever we're thinking about right now seems much more important for our overall happiness or life satisfaction than it actually is.
Like thinking moving to California will make me instantly happy because I'm focusing only on the sunshine.
Exactly that example. When you focus on climate, you exaggerate its importance to well-being. Studies comparing life satisfaction between Californians and, say, Midwesterners find very little difference overall. People adapt, other things matter more day to day, but when you focus on climate, it looms large.
Nothing in life is as important as you think it is when you're thinking about it.
That's the essence of it.
Okay, wow. This has been a huge tour of our mental landscape. So many shortcuts, biases, illusions.
It really shows how intricate and sometimes flawed our thinking can be.
So just to recap the big picture, we use mental shortcuts, heuristics, that are fast but can lead to systematic errors, these biases. We've got the fast automatic system and the slow, effortful one.
Right. And our judgments get skewed by what's easily available, how things are framed, our tendency to jump to conclusions based on WISIAD, what you see is all there is.
Plus, our memories aren't perfect recordings. They focus on peaks and ends. Understanding all this is, it's powerful.
It gives you a richer vocabulary, like we said at the start, to understand your own mind and the world around you better, to be more well-informed about how you think.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for you listening right now.
Yeah.
Think about a decision you made recently. Anything big or small.
Yeah, reflect on it.
And considering everything we've talked about, anchoring, framing, availability, WISIOT, maybe even the planning fallacy, can you spot any of these biases potentially nudging your choice?
Just becoming aware, noticing these tendencies in yourself, that's really the crucial first step towards making perhaps slightly wiser, less error-prone judgments going forward. Something to chew on.